Welcome to another edition of the Press Box Podcast. I am your host, Ralph Miranda. I'll be joined by my co-host, Joseph Miranda, shortly. Today we get back in interview mode. We have a special guest for you today. Joining us on the Press Box Podcast, former Maryville High School quarterback Philip Juhlin will join us. Philip quarterbacked the Rebels, approximately 10 years ago or so, and after that went on to play at Carson Newman College and then on to the American football leagues in Europe. Played a little bit in Sweden. Now he's in Poland. And Philip will join us directly from Poland right now to talk to us about his travels throughout Europe, his career on playing American football overseas, and of course, other things about his growing up as a football star and as a football hero in the Maryville area. We've got lots of great stories from Philip. We're going to talk a little bit about his life in general. And of course, we'll do our rapid fire segment as we do with all our guests on the Press Box Podcast. So sit back and enjoy episode number 33 if you're counting at home. And without further ado, let's get right into it on the Press Box Podcast. Welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Ralph Miranda, along with my co-host, Joseph Miranda. And today we are especially honored to have as our guest, Philip Juhlin. And those of you around Maryville and East Tennessee especially know Philip very well. He was the starting quarterback at Maryville High School back in the late 2000s, somewhere around 2007, 8, 9 in that general time frame. Philip went on to play college football at Carson Newman for a while, and now is playing professional football in Sweden. So we're welcome to have Philip Juhlin on the podcast. And Philip, how are you doing tonight?
We're doing good, man. That's quite an intro.
We appreciate you joining us. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, man.
I say tonight for our listeners because this is an interesting podcast. We've got my co-host Joseph is in Arizona. I'm in Tennessee and Philip's in Sweden. So we're kind of juggling 3 time zones here. And we caught Philip coming back from football practice. So he's staying up late for us tonight. And we certainly appreciate that.
Anything for you, Ralph. But hey, actually, I'm not in Sweden, actually.
You're not?
I'm in Poland. So that's kind of a fun story. But we can get into that a little bit. Yeah, we can get into that a little bit later.
That's a good thing. We'll get into that a little bit later. That's good. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started by Philip. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about that. I know most of the people here in East Tennessee remember you as a football player at Maryville, but obviously, that's not all that Philip Juhlin is. So let's go back and kind of talk a little bit about when you were growing up. I mean, a little bit about some of the things you like to get into aside from sports, maybe what you majored in college or what you'd like to do, when Father Time creeps up to you and you can't put the pads on anymore.
Well, the plan right now is to try to, play as long as the body will let me.
Right.
But I'm not really sure how far back you want to go. But when I grew up, I wasn't very. When I was growing up, I wasn't really. Yeah, when I was growing up, I wasn't that into sports, honestly. I remember my mom really wanted me to be, and I remember one birthday. I can't remember how old I was, but I remember that she got me. Like back in the day, you could get these plastic like uniform kits at like Walmart with like the plastic helmet and the shoulder pads. And I remember she got me a Dallas Cowboys get up back when I was a little kid. And I would always take my little sister out and we'd always go out and I'd tackle her a bunch. So that's kind of where I first got into American football. And then I didn't really start I was actually a pretty late bloomer if you compare it with a lot of the other guys back from East Tennessee. So I started playing when I was 12, actually, for the Bears.
Right.
And I remember it was Lake and Kimsey. Him and his dad were really involved with the Bears back in the day. And me and him, we were in the same class together. I think we were having recess and we was throwing the ball around. And he was like, "Hey, you want to come try it out?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" And I actually had to keep it a secret, which is kind of funny for the first little while because my mom didn't really want me to play football. She thought it was too dangerous.
Right.
So I had to keep it a secret from her. So me and Lake would always ride to practice after school, and I'd just tell her I was going to hang out at his house. And it probably took about 2 weeks before she started noticing all the bruises and all the cuts and stuff. Because I was playing tight end and D end at that time. But I mean, then it just kind of, spiraled into something I loved. And then luckily I'm able to do what I'm doing right now.
We'll start there with that Bears experience. And I know you just said you played tight end and D. And how did you evolve into the quarterback position? Because it seems like a lot of times, especially these days, kids start playing at 7 and 8, and someone is kind of anointed the quarterback, and that's the position they ride all the way through high school. So how did you get into that side of the ball at quarterback?
Well, luckily for me, we didn't really have a quarterback on the team at the time. And I think there's a lot of people who probably have the same story as me, where, the team doesn't have a quarterback. So they had like a tryout just to see who could throw the football. And I remember I got out there and I ripped it. I probably threw it like 40 yards or something like that. I'm not trying to brag or anything. Right. I threw it far. And then I remember Coach Pry, he was just like, "Hey, you're the quarterback." I was like, "All right, let's go." It was kind of crazy how it happened.
Let's flip that question that Joseph asked kind of the other way, because like he said, sometimes, somebody just gets anointed the quarterback and then all of a sudden they're a quarterback, for the rest of their career. So did you really want to be a quarterback, or was that something you embraced, or was it more like, oh, well, I guess I just have to kind of follow through on this?
Well, at that time, I knew that I didn't know like a whole lot about football, but I knew that the quarterbacks are always in the newspaper. They always had the prettiest girlfriends, all the cliche stuff. So, once I got the position, I was pretty set on trying to keep it.
Good.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say then. Okay, so you said you threw the ball 40 yards in that experiment. How much passing actually went on at that age, and I guess what were you asked to do in that offense? I can't imagine you were throwing that many deep routes back then.
No, well, I say 40 yards. It was probably like 25, but it was still long for that age. But it's crazy because, I've actually tried to go back, and I've been trying to reach out to people to try to get tape from the 2004 Maryville Bears, because I would love to see, what we actually did. But I believe that we were actually one of the most passing teams, because I know we had a really good receiver in Lee Bristol who was faster than anybody on the field. And I could literally, you just drop back and throw it as far as you can, and 9 out of 10 times it's going to be a touchdown. But I think it felt like we threw it a lot, but we were probably run dominant, just like everybody else at that age.
Right.
And I was another thing that helped me get the quarterback position is I was probably as tall as I am right now in 2004. I was taller than everybody then, but everybody passed me up now. But I was a tall kid at that age, so that helped too. And I could run a little bit, and I was coachable. All the qualities you need in a quarterback.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your youth. I mean, from the standpoint, you said your mom really didn't want you to play football because she kind of thought it was dangerous, and you've made a couple references to not really knowing much about the game. So I know you've lived in Sweden for a while, and you said now you're in Poland, and so I mean, is your dad or mom from one of those countries, or how's that connection?
Yeah, so I got really lucky. Because my dad he's full Swedish. He moved to America when he was 18, I think, and then ended up meeting my mom. Okay. But what that did was it gave me a dual citizenship. So, I mean, to put it simply, I can come and go between the countries without a problem. There's no visas needed. There's, nothing. And since it's an EU country that I have a citizenship in, I can go anywhere in Europe without a problem, essentially. Okay. So I got really lucky through that, and it's been good. It's helped a lot here in the later parts of my years.
So yeah, no, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that your first time going over there was not your first foray into professional football. So talk a little bit about maybe your first experiences over there and kind of what you remember from those trips, and if you went there as a child, and what was your first impression of it?
I believe that we've been coming to Sweden. I want to say at least once a year since I was 2. And then actually lived for a year when I was 6 in 97. I actually went to school for a year here. But I think my mom had a little bit of a hard time adapting. You know, she's from East Tennessee. You know, I don't want to say redneck, but she didn't really stray far away from home. And then she just moves to a new country where it snows, 11 months out of the year. And, it's tough. It's tough. And so we ended up moving back. But, every year we've always tried to come over for at least a Christmas or, some other holiday. So it wasn't my first time when I moved here. I do remember the first time that I came here. I came with my dad when I came to stay. And then when he left for the first time, that's when it really hit me. When he was going back home, but I was staying.
Yeah.
Right. That was the first time really being alone. And I remember that pretty clearly. But, it was nice because I have family everywhere in Sweden. So it wasn't like I was just coming to a new place and just getting dropped in the business, Yeah. It was a pretty easy transition.
So what was it like growing? I mean, my dad came over here from Italy after World War II. So he was Italian, and there was always, my mom and my dad. My mom was born here, but her parents were from Italy. So whenever they didn't want me to, when I was growing up, whenever they didn't want me to know what they were saying, they would just talk in Italian. So is that kind of what happened in your household? Like when your dad didn't want you to know what he was saying, did he talk Swedish to your mom, or I guess your mom didn't understand Swedish, but did he try to couch it that way?
But it always freaked me out when he was talking to his parents on the phone, because he would talk Swedish, and at that time I had no idea what was going on. So yeah, he used it a little bit, and my mom, she picked up Swedish really good, but she's a lot more comfortable like understanding it. She doesn't really like to speak it, but she understands fluently, I guess. I don't know if that's a real thing, but she understands everything. Yeah. And I remember when we were kids, my dad, he really wanted to teach us Swedish when I was younger, growing up. And he told me that they were going to do Swedish Sundays. So every Sunday they were going to only talk Swedish. But I think he said it lasted only one Sunday, but then they got tired of it, so they quit doing it.
Yeah, that's
I wish they would have, though. I wish they would have.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we get into your football, playing experiences in Sweden, kind of to finish up the timeline, take us through, obviously Ralph already mentioned you played at Maryville High School, had a lot of success there. Kind of that transition into college, and then ultimately, to where you are now. Kind of that time frame in your life.
Yeah, so high school was, it was, the typical quarterback story. I was coming in as a freshman. I didn't have any competition at that time because I won out the quarterback competition in middle school over a guy. He actually got injured, so it was kind of by luck. I was a third stringer going into the season. Then, first game of the year, one guy goes down, another guy goes down, and then I'm thrown in, and the rest is history. Right. But then we get into high school, so I didn't have any competition when I was a freshman. But then sophomore and junior year, that was when the real quarterback. I'd never really been in a quarterback competition like that before. But then it was injuries helped me out again. I hate to say it, but they happen, and I was ready to jump in. And then after high school, I didn't really get many looks. I'm not sure if it was the offense that we ran or what it was, but I didn't get many letters. But I did get a letter from Carson Newman, and I met with their coaches, and they seemed like really good people. And it was 45 minutes away from home, so it was far enough away to feel like I'm living on my own, but it's also close enough to where I can go home and see the family on the weekends. But sadly, I wasn't there that long. I was only there for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. So I made it through my first year, and then after spring training, the day came where it was time to pay the scholarships or pay the tuition. Sorry, and I just sat down and I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? They don't give full ride scholarships at Carson Newman D2. They give partials, and it was like partial, but it was still a lot of money to pay. Right. And, I was trying to weigh my options, as a 18, 19-year-old kid. I'm like, okay, what should we do here? I ended up calling my dad, talking to him a little bit, my mom a little bit, and then ended up the best thing would be for me to just stop playing. And at that point, I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was the last time I was going to play ball because I had never heard of football in Europe. I didn't think that was a thing. But then it's funny because Alex Rouse, who played at Maryville, played at Carson Newman. When he found out that I quit at Carson Newman, he's the one that got in touch with me and told me about the website that he used when he went and played in Finland. And he got me hooked up on that website. And then that's how eventually I found out about the football over here. Mm-hmm. And, me being a Swedish citizen, essentially, I don't count as an American against their rules. Right. They don't have to get work visas. I can just come and go as I please. So it was a blessing to say that, to be able to keep playing after I thought I was done. I remember that day I quit, man. I broke down. Everybody says it's hard to just walk away from the game, but and it is 100%. But luckily, it all ended up working out in the end, and still doing it to this day.
Let me go back real quick to your before we get into your professional career out there or in Europe, to your Maryville days, and I want to get the perspective from a Maryville player. There's a lot of pressure playing at Maryville High School. I mean, obviously you played during. I say during, they're still pretty good, but during probably some of their best years back in the mid 2000s when they rarely, if ever, lost a football game. And so not only were you playing at Maryville, you were the quarterback at Maryville, and a lot of pressure goes into that. So what was it like being the quarterback? I mean, you've talked a little bit about what it was like from the good side. What are some of the pressures that you felt, whether real or imagined?
You kind of just, you nailed it on the head, man. It's a very prestigious program. It's a very successful program. It's a very important position. And, as a 15, 16-year-old kid, you don't really either you're going to let the pressure get to you, or you're maybe just not going to understand the actuality of the situation. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in the beginning, the pressure was getting to me, but the coaching staff did a really, really good job of helping me out, not just on the field, but just helping me out, carrying the load, or not necessarily carrying the load, but keeping me grounded. They did a good job of, reminding me all the time, it's just a game. It's stuff's going to go wrong. It happens. That's football. So they did a really good job of keeping me under control, making sure I didn't let the pressure get to me too much. But I mean, yeah, when I was coming in, and my first game that I played, the team hadn't lost a game in, I believe, 4 years. Right. Trying to fill in shoes like Brent Burnett. I mean, it's hard to do. It really is. But the good thing about Maryville is it's one of the few schools that truly were successful, not necessarily through the players, but just through the system. Right. And I hate to say it, but I feel like in the system, anybody could really jump in and be successful. And I was luckily the guy who got to be the quarterback in the system. And it was a great place to learn. I learned a lot about football, a lot about being a man at Maryville. So yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of the success that I've had, it goes back to them, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, did you know going into high school that you might want to play football beyond high school, whether it's college or what you're doing now, or was it a certain point you remember that kind of clicked for you, or were you still not sure even as your high school career ended?
Well, I mean, I feel like if you're playing football in high school and you really care about it, then you do eventually have goals to take it on to the next level. Right. And being reminded constantly that you can actually you're not necessarily getting paid in college, but you are. You can use this in order to get a free education eventually if you're good enough. Right. So that was definitely my my motivation through high school. Absolutely. Yeah, it was a big part of it. A big part of it. I did have plans. I had no idea that I was going to be playing in Europe. I can tell you that. But for sure. It was definitely one of the goals.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to go back to the comment you made about and I guess you can explain this in terms of just kind of the European rules in general. But you said you did not count as an American on their roster. Explain the rules of I guess nationalities on a roster breakdown. Are there certain numbers that have to be allotted to certain countries?
Yeah, so it varies between countries. So in Sweden, the rule is that you're allowed to have 2 American imports.
Okay.
And that's it. You can only have 2 on your roster. And so the good thing about me was I didn't count, even though I was American and I'd lived here almost my entire life. I didn't count, so they could bring me and then also 2 more Americans.
Right.
So that's where they kind of found a loophole. But then you have, like where I'm at right now, I'm in Poland. I count right now as an American import because of their rules. They're different. Yeah. So you have to have a Polish citizenship. It's not just European.
Gotcha.
But there's different rules out here depending on which country you're going to go to. I know Germany's got different rules, and that's kind of where like the powerhouse football is out here in Europe.
Right.
And I'm not 100% sure what the rules are, but I know I think you can have like 3 or 4 American imports on the field at a time, or I'm not 100% sure, but there's different rules, depends on which country you're at.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine those rules are so that the game develops over there. Otherwise, these teams would bring in 20, 25 Americans because the sport is so much more advanced here.
Yeah, 100%. They're trying to build it inside the country, like you said. It'd be a good show, if you brought over that many Americans, but then at the end of the day, you're not really getting your own into the sport.
Right.
They're just, getting their spots taken by Americans. So, in a sense, I understand the rule 100%. But that's how it is.
What have you found? How many years have you been playing in Europe?
My first season was 2012. So I played in Sweden from 2012 until 2018. So this is my first year outside of Sweden.
Okay. So you've played over there for quite some time then. So how is the game? How did you find the game when you went over there compared to the American game?
It's funny. I remember my first game because I was playing my first game here in Sweden in, I believe, January, February, March, April, maybe the end of May, we'll say. But at that point, I hadn't played in a football game since state 2009. So I hadn't played a football game in 3 years. Huh. So my nerves going into that game were off the charts. But then we started playing a little bit, and then I got to, I started to realize that, it's not that big of a sport out here. I always like to use the comparison. It's like football and soccer in America, but you just flip it over here. Right. You have football. It's not that big. Soccer, it's huge over here. So it falls a little further down on the ladder over here. But that being said, I mean, the love for the game's there. Everybody who's on the team, they love it. They'll give their heart, blood, sweat, everything for the game. So the commitment's there, but just the skill level, it's not quite. It's not near what it is in America.
What would you compare? I mean, I know there's different levels over there. I'm not all that familiar with the game, but I know there's different tiers. Like you mentioned, Germany having a pretty strong American football contingent, and I know Italy's got some teams that are pretty strong, and they've got others that might be considered second tier or even third tier. So how would you compare it? If you had to compare the football over there, would you compare it to Division I AA here, Division II? I mean, how would you compare it?
I feel like if you took the best team from Europe, I think they might be able to. They play an annual game. Against a D3 college. They always bring one over, and it's always a pretty close game. But the team from Europe normally wins.
Okay.
They might be able to stand their own against a lower tier D2 team.
Okay.
But as far as Sweden and Poland, where I'm at right now, maybe a low D3 school.
Okay.
I don't want to say high school. That wouldn't be a good game. But
right.
Like a lower than average D3 school, I think would be probably the best comparison.
Right.
Okay.
So how about kind of the reception of the sport there by the fans? I mean, I know you kind of compared it to soccer in our country, but there's certainly pockets of the United States that has big time soccer fans. Just kind of in general, being around the cities you go to, what's the reaction from the citizens or fans of the sport that you've seen?
I mean, every team I've been on, we've had our loyal set of fans, but the sad part is it's just not as big as we're used to in the States.
Right.
I think an average game, we might have 1,000 on a good game in the crowd watching. But that's if you have perfect weather, the sun's out, rainy games, you might get maybe 400.
Right.
So
right.
It's a pretty big drop off as far as attendance.
Right.
But
I get
the people who are the people who are involved in the team. I mean, they love it. They tailgate. All the same stuff you do back home.
Yeah.
It's just not the quantity that we're used to.
I guess I also just meant kind of in general the kind of the public's reaction to the sport of football. Like, do they watch NFL games? Are they knowledgeable about the sport? Not just necessarily the fans that come to the games.
It's really hard to be an NFL fan over here because the early games start at about 7:00 at night.
Right.
So if you're a true fan and you want to stay up for those games, you're going to be up until about 4:00 in the morning watching. If you're watching the Monday night football game, and a lot of people got to work, so they don't really do it. But I mean, I'm not really sure how to compare it. It's not that big, actually. You're not going to go to the store and find, football hats or football jerseys. You can barely find football cleats out here. You have to wear soccer cleats if you don't order from the States.
Right.
So I want to say it's a growing sport. Since I've been here for the last 6-7 years, it's definitely been growing, but it's still not where I'd like it to be, at least.
Right. So how do you let's talk about a little bit about how you got to Poland. I mean, you were in Sweden playing for about 6 years, and now you're in Poland. So what constituted that move?
Well, from 2012 until 2015, I was playing with the same team, and then I got signed to a different team for a 3-year contract. And then 2018, that contract expired, and then I was kind of put in the same kind of situation I was when I left Carson Newman. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep playing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. So I ended up deciding, I talked to my girl. Everything was okay. She was fine with it. I ended up taking a job in Poland, planning on at least, dedicating one more solid year. And then we'll be in the same situation next year, and we'll see what happens. Right.
So you mentioned taking a job. So what do you do? What kind of work do you do?
Oh, I mean, this is just it. A lot of people say professional. I like to say semi-pro.
Right.
We make enough money out here to, pay the bills. You don't need to work extra. You get by. So it's
good.
And it's pretty, generous pay out here in Poland.
Excellent.
So right now, we practice 3 times a week, have games on Saturday or Sunday. We like to call it the import life. So we're pretty much on vacation.
We'll be back with more from Philip Juhlin shortly, but before we do, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Pressbox Podcast. Go to the iTunes store, click on the Pressbox Podcast with Ralph Miranda and Joseph Miranda. The logo is a picture of a stadium press box, and you can get every episode that we drop immediately as it's downloaded right onto your iPhone or iPad app, your podcast app. We also want to tell you to plug, or we want to plug and tell you to subscribe to Philip's podcast. Philip does a podcast as well. It's called Phil Talk, and he talks a little bit about his experiences throughout Europe and his experiences playing football. So remember, that's Phil Talk, and that app, you can also get that on the iTunes app as well, on your podcast app through the iTunes store. Also want to remind you of a new YouTube documentary series called Mascots and Monikers. That's a effort among myself, our producer Nathan Miranda, and my co-host Joseph Miranda. We've all got our roles in it. Nathan is our producer, and he edits and puts it up on YouTube. Joseph is the writer, and I do the hosting of it. It's a new YouTube series that talks about the name or the story behind the names of your favorite sports team. So if you're a Dodger fan, how did they become the Dodgers? If you're a Notre Dame fan, how did they become the Fighting Irish? You can search for it on YouTube, Mascots and Monikers. If you have a Google account, you can subscribe to it. If you don't, you certainly can listen and watch each episode, and make sure if you like it to hit that thumbs up button on YouTube to tell us that you like it, so we can know the things that are interesting to you all, and we can improve those as well. So that's Mascots and Monikers on YouTube. And without further ado, let's get right back to the Press Box Podcast and our interview with Philip Juhlin.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a question about, because I'm a strength conditioning coach, kind of the training out there. Is it? I mean, anybody who has played football, at either high school or college or pro level in the United States, obviously knows, what goes into, whether it's off-season workouts or team workouts, kind of just the overall training philosophy. How was that over there? Have you found it different, the same? Is there kind of a lack of one?
So far, I've been to 3 different teams. On one of the teams, we had a really good off season where we did it together as a team.
Right.
And then the 2 others were kind of like, we had one team where they gave you a workout and you had to do it on your own. And then the team I'm at right now, they just lost their strength and conditioning coach, I believe. So we're looking for somebody, Joseph. You want to come out to Poland?
Yeah, well, I'll keep that in mind if I ever need to. But
it's cold.
It's definitely interesting.
Better bring your sweater.
Bring a jacket.
No, the team I'm at right now, we're kind of just on our own. The coaches trust us to, do what we need to do. And then the trainings we have, they're on the field, pads and helmet. So there's not much lifting or training going on there. Or there is, but not in the weight room. So
right.
As of right now, we're just kind of on our own.
Right.
But like you were saying, I played in high school. I had Coach Thompson, and Carson Newman.
Right.
We had a really good weight coach. So I have a good idea of what I need to do to get myself ready. And anybody who needs help, I'd absolutely, be willing to help them out.
Yeah, for sure.
If you were put on your general manager cap or your coach cap, or if there is such a thing, and kind of step outside and look at European football, if you were if you had a hand in making it better, or doing something, 1 or 2 things to bring it up to the next level, what do you think it lacks right now? Is it that strength and conditioning element? Is it better coaching? Is it more technique? I mean, what do you think could be brought into European football on a whole that would make it better and bring it up to a higher standard?
I mean, to be honest, right now, it's just the numbers that are lacking. So the first thing I would do is I'd bump up advertisement. Because
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of people who don't even know that there's a team. So I definitely do that. Of course, technique-wise, you could always use, really good coaches who know what they're doing. A lot of
Right.
European teams have coaches, but most of these coaches are ex-players who never had real coaching to begin with.
Right.
So they're out there, they're doing their best. But I mean, the only thing that they know is maybe stuff they read off the internet or seen on YouTube.
Right.
And it's different when you hear it coming from somebody who, lives it.
Right.
So American coaches would definitely be a positive thing. And yeah, I mean, like I said, just the numbers, they're just not there. Not that many people know about it. And over here in Europe, if you're a good athlete, you're going to go and play soccer, or you're going to go and play handball or hockey, or
Right.
you got a lot of other choices before it trickles down to American football.
Right. Right. That's a good point.
So
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You mentioned kind of like during your off season, you do have some free time. Do you get a chance to travel a little bit within the country of Poland, or what are just some general things you like to do when you have free time over there?
Well, right now we don't have much of free time. We have a few days here and there. I went back to Sweden a couple weeks ago, just for a little 4-day trip. But most of the time we've just been honestly in the apartment. It's been cold. It's been rainy and snowy. It's not the place I'm at's a really good summer city, they say. But it's like I said, it's a little bit above freezing right now. So you don't really want to leave the bed. So we haven't done much traveling so far, but when it gets warmer and we get a few bye weeks, I mean, it's definitely it's nothing to jump on a train for 6 hours and be in, the Czech Republic, or jump on a plane and go check out Paris. Everything is accessible.
How is it? Let's step away from the football aspect for a minute. I mean, you've had an experience that not many young people for sure have a chance to experience, and that's, visiting all these different countries. So what is just that opportunity of being able to do that, to live in different countries, to visit different countries like you just talked about? What has that done for you as a person, and what sort of advantages have you seen from it?
It's really just being able to see what the world's like outside of the United States. Honestly, it's really eye-opening. A lot of the places I've been, I just like to soak it in, and I do a lot of comparing, between the U.S. and all these other places over here. And there's just so many differences that people would, I believe, really benefit if they were able to come and see it in person, and not just, YouTube videos or stuff like that, but to actually come and, see it for themselves.
Yeah. All right. Ralph just asked you to put on your, I guess, general manager's hat there to talk about the state of football in Europe, or Sweden and Poland. Put on your scouts hat now, and if someone was asking about a scouting report on Philip Juhlin, the quarterback, what would you tell them?
Oh man.
Just your style of play.
I'm being harsh on myself.
No, you don't have to be critical. Just your style of play, that type of thing.
He's above average. He's not fast. He doesn't make every throw, but he's the best compliment I ever got was in high school when people were calling me a field general, and I feel like it's still true to this day. I mean, just my understanding of the game, I feel like, is a little bit different than other people's. I've been playing for a really long time, and I rely a lot more on the smarts than the athleticism. I'm really good at taking what the defense gives and improvising. And experience. That's a huge deal when you're playing quarterback. The more you've played, the more you've seen. So the more ready you're going to be if you see something later. Experience is huge, and I think that's probably the thing that I got going for me the most right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think you sell yourself a little bit short there. I remember, obviously you're a little older now than when you were in high school, but I do remember you playing quarterback at Maryville, and you were fast enough. You were very fast, and you executed that offense to a T. So I think you're a little bit above average, if that would be my indication.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
So how old are you right now then?
27.
Okay,
turning 28 in November.
Okay, so how does that compare with kind of some of the ages you see over there in those leagues? Is it typically a younger league, or are there some players in their 30s and even 40s?
Man, they're all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, the first team I played for, we had our starting safety and kicker. I think he was 49. Fastest guy on the team. I'm not kidding you. Oh my goodness. And he only had one bicep because he ripped the other one at work, so it looked so weird.
Wow.
But he was 49, I believe. And then I think this year we have a few who are, mid 30s, and then we have guys who are, 18. So it's the range is just, all over the place over here.
Yeah.
So you think you could get me a tryout? I mean, I played up until about 10 years ago.
We need a place kicker.
No, I can't kick. I can play middle linebacker and cover the A gaps, but that's about it.
So
I'll talk to the coach. I'll see if we can get something set up.
So either way, I mean, whether you play another 10 years or 5 years, have you thought about what you might want to do after your playing days are over? I mean, would it be staying in football some way, or it was something maybe you studied in school that you really want to get into? Have you thought about that at all?
Actually, yeah. I plan on being involved some way in football, right. Whether it's coaching or whether it's playing at a low division just for fun, maybe trying a new position.
Right.
But I want to be involved in football. It's like I said, it's a hard game to walk away from it. Yeah. So why do it,
Right.
But right now I've actually applied to a school. I want to be a graphic designer.
Ah.
That's my plan. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'm waiting to hear back from them. Whether I get in or not, I'm pretty set on doing it. So I might be a self-taught, or I might be, a graduate from somewhere. But that's my plan right now. But then again, next week I could want to be a commercial pilot. I'm getting older, but my brain's still all over the place. I still don't know what I want to do.
There's nothing wrong with that. Believe me, there's not. So no. Do you think you'd want to stay in Europe, or is that something that you'd want to pursue over here?
In a perfect world, I'm doing something where I'm traveling back and forth.
Okay.
Because I've compiled a list right now that is so long of pros and cons from both places, and there's no chance I'm ever gonna burn the bridge to one side. I'm gonna do whatever I can to try to keep this as long as I can. I'm not sure what kind of rules they're gonna apply, but as long as I can, I'm going to try to keep this. And I want to be able to say that I have two homes for as long as I can.
Right.
Even though my second home is in Michigan now, because my parents moved.
Oh, they moved? That's right. You told me that when I saw you at Olympia over the holidays, that they had moved to Michigan. So that's interesting. Yeah. And then you have one sister, or do you have other brothers and sisters?
I have one sister and one half sister.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And do they live in Michigan too now, or?
No, my sister actually stayed in Tennessee. She got her own place. She's got a pretty nice job. She's actually living in, I think, Knoxville. She's working in Pigeon Forge.
Okay. All right.
She's got a new apartment. Yeah.
And you mentioned, you made reference to a girlfriend. So is there a Mrs. Juhlin in the future, or is it just,
Oh, eventually, right? I mean, that's the goal, but we'll see. Everything's going good, man. We've been together for a long time.
Good.
So
Good.
Yeah. Everything's good.
Well, Philip, as I mentioned to you before, we'd like to kind of end up on we play a little game of rapid fire with our guests, where we kind of throw out some comments or choices of things that you prefer, not prefer, maybe some things that you may have done when you were growing up. So we'll kind of throw it out there, and you just kind of give us your answer, and if you want to elaborate on it, you can. Okay.
I've never been more ready for anything.
Oh, good. Okay, excellent. All right. So the first question is, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, goodness. It's funny because you were asking Hunt the same question, and he froze up. I was like, dude, how'd you freeze up? I'm freezing up right now. I'm in the hot seat. I'm a comedy fan, so probably Big Daddy. No, Happy Gilmore.
Okay, those are both good. Both good.
Well, before I let Joseph ask his question, I got to digress a minute, since you mentioned Adam Sandler movies. When you started out early on in the podcast talking about how you had to hide playing football from your mother until she saw all the bruises, did you give her the water boy line like Adam Sandler and say that an ape attacked you, and then your mom would have put up posters looking for the ape that attacked the son?
I had to make it more realistic. I said it was a black bear.
The black bear. There you go.
All right. What's your go-to pregame meal?
I don't eat before games.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
No, I've never done that since high school. Okay. I can't do it.
Who's
I'm always afraid I'll get a bad stomach. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
I never risk it.
No, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What when you were growing up, whose poster was on your wall?
Oh, whose poster? I didn't have a person.
Okay.
I had an SR-71 Blackbird, if you know what that is. It's a military stealth bomber.
Wow.
Yeah, I had one of those in my room until I moved out.
Okay.
Awesome. We might still have that, actually. I need to ask.
What's the one thing you miss most about Sweden when you're in America?
The food.
What's your favorite food over there?
Oh my gosh, man! My favorite traditional food is probably the meatballs. Yeah, but just the quality of the food. Even if you go to McDonald's, they have different rules than they do in America with the whole FDA and all that stuff.
Right.
So they can't use a lot of fake stuff. So the ketchup tastes so much different. The Coke tastes so much different. Everything just tastes different in a good way, I think. Yeah.
Who are your top 5 quarterbacks of all time?
All time?
Yeah.
Let's go. We got to go Tom Brady. Number. Oh,
you don't have to give him in any order. If you don't
okay. We'll go Brady. We'll go Manning.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go. I know it's going to sound biased, but I like T. Martin back when he was at UT. I know he didn't really have a super good career, but T. Martin. I like Stafford. He's a fighter. I like Stafford, and let's go with Derek Carr.
Okay. Derek Carr.
Okay.
Yeah. That's an interesting choice.
I feel like he's the one that I think reminds me of myself as more than anybody else in the league.
Okay. For sure. Okay. Skittles or M&Ms?
Can we say peanut M&M?
Yes, that's perfectly acceptable.
All right, those are my favorite candy of all time. Okay. Peanut M&M.
All right.
Day games or night games?
Oh, man, they're both good. Oh, they're both good. But in high school, I couldn't imagine playing a day game. We'll have to say night games. Yeah, it's just the feeling of the lights shutting on and yeah, we'll have to go night games for sure.
Okay. Right. What actor would you choose to play you in a movie about your life?
Let's go with. God, these are good questions, man.
Yeah. Hey, you're in the hot seat. It's part of it.
Denzel Washington.
He's
my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Why not?
He's my favorite actor. Yeah. Well, Denzel.
What's the most favorite game you've ever played in?
Oh man, I had a bunch of them my senior year. We just got moved up to 6A, and we had I think 2 or 3 comeback wins.
Right.
Which were special, but I think the most special to me so far is probably a game in Sweden we played in 2013. It was our first year moving up to the top series. And we played against the reigning champions, and we upset them at home in a shootout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Cool. Okay. All right. One country you have not visited yet that you want to visit?
Spain.
Okay.
Spain. Okay. And then my last question is: if you could have lunch or dinner with one person, history, alive or not, but one person over history, who would it be?
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell.
Okay. Comedy fan.
He just seems like I'm a comedy man, and he just seems like a down to earth guy.
What's your favorite Will Ferrell
movie? And plus
movie?
Oh gosh, probably I just watched Get Hard the other day. Yeah. That's a pretty good one.
That was pretty good, yeah.
And plus his wife is Swedish. So I think it'd be funny for me and him to try to talk Swedish together. I think I
didn't know that.
That'd be fun.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. He's over here a lot, supposedly.
Well, Philip, we can't thank you enough for being on the podcast, but 2, for doing it at a late hour where you're at, because I know you just got back from practice and I'm sure you're probably worn out, but we can't thank you enough. And I just want to tell you how much I respect you and appreciate all you've done, and enjoyed bringing you over to Charter that time and taking you through that internship that you did. And
sorry for cutting you off right here, but do you remember when we recorded? Because it was me and Lakin, we did the internship,
right?
And we recorded a TV show.
I remember that.
I have it.
Good.
I just found it, man. I just watched it when I was back home.
Good.
That's funny.
Good. Yeah, you guys did a great job, and you're a great guy. Appreciate everything you do, and it's been a pleasure knowing you, and we want to thank you again for being on the podcast.
No, I'm so glad I ran into you guys, man.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
We enjoyed it. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys for having me, man.
All right, for sure.
Well, listen, you take care of yourself and do good out there, and hopefully we'll get to see you when you're back home next time.
All right, man. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
So thanks for joining us on the Press Box Podcast. Today we had Philip Juhlin join us from Poland, and I'm sure you enjoyed the stories of Philip's past growing up and, of course, his years at Maryville High School, as well as his years playing American football overseas in Europe. The game is growing, and Philip's been a part of it for the last, 6 or 7 years. So a great show today on the Press Box Podcast. Remember, you can subscribe to the Press Box Podcast on iTunes. Just go in and search for the Press Box Podcast with Ralph Miranda and Joseph Miranda. Click subscribe, and every time we download an episode, it'll be downloaded right onto your podcast app. So we appreciate you joining us, and make sure you stay with us for the next time on the Press Box Podcast.